It's hard to believe it, but not even 100 years ago, we were using horse and buggies. Just 30 years ago, most of the general public didn't have internet. And although we're not quite at flying car level yet, we are looking into the oncoming train of learning algorithms, more self driving cars, and movie streaming as far as the Amazon. It's exciting, right? But why then does it feel so good, so right, to get off the grid, to walk barefoot in the grass, and to wake up with the sun? It seems that hours of advanced technology filling our daily lives seems to have left us with more mood disorders and back pain. Are we maladapted for the very world we've created? My next guest got her PhD in immunology from the University of Colorado and recently co authored the book On the Origin of Being, Understanding the Science of Evolution to Enhance Your Quality of Life. Today, we're talking about evolutionary mismatch. The idea that although our environment is quickly upgrading, our biology is still best suited for the hunter gatherer world. And fear not, this is not a doom and gloom discussion. We will be including what we can actually do about it without abandoning the tech that we've grown to love. Scientist, biological adapter, conscious biohacker, Dr. Jenny Powers. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our talk.
I always hear people say things like, oh, yeah, we're going off to the woods to, you know, detox or to reset. Like, those are the words that we throw around. So I think, like, they're at a very deep level. People know, okay, this is a problem. We need some sort of realignment. But if it really is the cause of so much of what ails us, why are we never hearing about evolutionary mismatch?
I think it's because we're caught up in this fast moving modern world and it's shiny. It captures our imagination. It's entertaining. And it isn't until we have those quiet moments when we actually realize that, oh, I need to go detox. It's funny that people go camping and go in the woods and they garden, they go to do the things that hunter gatherers did on a daily basis when they want to reconnect. So our pastimes, outdoor hobbies are basically how we used to live.
Yeah, that's interesting. There is an outpacing there, but if this is like a part of evolution, even though the part that is causing us problems is what we have created, not what has evolved, I'll say naturally, why not just let evolution take its course? Why intervene?
Well, because I don't think we've had enough time to evolve. The mismatch theory is that because the environment is so radically different than the one we evolved in, and it changed, especially in the last 100 years, like you were talking about, it's changed exponentially. But we're basically still running hunter gatherer software. Most of our genes and our evolved needs are the same as they were. And so when we live in accord with our evolutionary design, we have homeostasis, we have equilibrium. Our lives are to serve our bodies, right? And to serve our health. But right now, we're living in discord. And like you said, our mental health is suffering, our physical health is suffering. We have these things called the diseases of modernity that we never used to go to the doctor for. 50, 100 years ago, there was not obesity and diabetes and heart disease and all these mental health problems. And it's because we've forgotten that we need to serve our bodies first. And our bodies have evolved needs that our modern environment isn't meeting. And that doesn't mean to say that we can't meet it. We just need to be aware of what our bodies need so we can meet it in a new way, in a different way.
I think you hit on something there that is the thing one where people struggle is to be aware of what our bodies need. There is such a disconnect. I'd love your take on this if it's generational. I seem to notice a mind body disconnect with people that are 55 and above. They just have completely outsourced their wellness and take this medication and I eat this thing that I'm told I'm supposed to eat, but there's no connection between why they even hurt or how they got bruised or any of it.
Right.
Do you ever talk with people about how to start there? Because, I think more people are gaining mind body awareness, but for those of my listeners who are like, I don't even know up from down of my own body, or they're not making those connections between, oh, I got an ulcer and I had stress at work. How do you even begin in that awareness area?
I think it can be really overwhelming because I think people feel like there's a switch you can turn on and then you're all of a sudden self-aware. It takes a lot of practice, and a lot of the things that we do in our life that are for the benefit of our health, exercise, diet, it's all a practice. We can't just decide. And then if we just say, okay, from now on, I'm going to eat this healthy. And then when we accidentally or on purpose get off that diet, we're really harsh on ourselves. So I think the first thing is just to realize that this mind-body awareness is a practice, and you just have to start small. Being mind-body aware means you have to be in the present moment. That is the most important thing. So meditation, mindfulness, all of these things that have become more and more popular are a great place to start. And just to remember that it is a practice.
It is a practice. Yeah. You almost have to interrogate yourself. You know what I mean? It's been harder for me historically when I'm feeling good. Oh, I've been feeling really good. And then I'm just like, woohoo. Yeah. I don't stop to go, I wonder what I'm doing that's contributing to me feeling good. And that'd probably be helpful. but there's
Right.
but there's lots of these pragmatic obstacles that people run up against because we are modern humans. We can't just go, most of us, living in the woods and walking barefoot in the grass and all the things that I just talked about. More people live in urban areas than ever before. And so it would be, not helpful to just not go to work. We are going to cover work, but let's first cover nature, because we're going to kind of go through these different departments of, if you will, like you laid out in the book so neatly. And the first one is our relationship with nature. So my question is, if we have food and we have water and we have our family, why is it so bad that we only spend time in nature on the weekends?
Well, I think the number one reason is that people have become disconnected. Where do we get that clean water? Where do we get that food? Where do we get clean air? All of these things come from the outdoors, come from nature. And so I think it's a little short-sighted to stay, to just be in our houses and have our Netflix on and be surrounded by our loved ones, which is wonderful. But that's not how we evolved. We evolved in nature, and I think human beings are the only species that doesn't live in our natural habitat. Usually, when a species' natural habitat is getting destroyed, that species becomes endangered. We have to make sure that we have this connection that the earth provides everything that we need. And having a connection with it means that you're more likely to care about it and care what happens to it. So we don't get ourselves on the endangered list because our natural habitat is being destroyed. So connection is a very important thing, not just because we need to save the environment, but the environment does so much for us too. There have been so many studies about going out into nature and how it lowers your stress level and enhances your ability to focus. There are so many benefits of nature that I think people going out there and getting a connection and caring about what's going on around you isn't just altruistic. It is actually helping you as well.
And that's the struggle, right? You live in Colorado
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking to Queen Nature nerd over here. So, you and I could high five each other all day about, yeah, nature and connecting and Mother Earth. But there's a lot of people out there that couldn't give two shits. And they're like, tell me, why is this worth my time? Why will not doing this make my life harder? How would you answer that?
Well, I think that there's this innate love of nature that actually evolved in us. It's called biophilia. It's E.O. Wilson's hypothesis. And our affinity with nature and with living things was actually a survival adaptation, because the people who were the most connected, adapted, could actually understand what's going on around them, know where the resources are, where the predators are. Those are the people who were the ones who survived. And we don't have that survival pressure anymore. So it's not necessarily, you're going to wither up and not have a great life if you don't go out into nature, but it's part of who we are as human beings. And so if you don't go out in nature, you don't gain any benefits from it. So then when there is air pollution and there is not access to clean water and there is heat waves and tornadoes and hurricanes, there's that disconnect between why should I care? Well, like I said, nature gives us everything that we need in life. And if we ignore nature, it's going to take what we give it, which is a lot of environmental degradation, and it's going to come back to bite us.
Yeah, I think it's hard for folks to see into the future like that, but maybe it's because we're not in nature, like you're saying, like that connection. We were just talking about the mind body connection, but that human nature and non human nature connection maybe is part of that cognitive connect or disconnect if we don't have it. How do you suggest people who are living in that modern routine, how do you suggest people who have that modern routine of living get outside and get more fresh air? How do you prioritize that? How do you make time for it? Because, I mean, you know how it is. You wake up Monday morning like it is today, and before you know it, it's Friday afternoon. That's how my weeks go. And how do you make time to be outside?
Well, I think just like physical exercise, I think it's something that people need to start scheduling in their day, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning. What I started to do was I get my morning cup of coffee and I go and I sit and I put my feet in the grass and I look up in the trees and listen to the birds. And if it's for 5 minutes, I feel like that's a really important way to start my day. Being in nature is not just helping ourselves, it's also resetting our circadian rhythms, which is part of the sleep chapter. But what's really important in our circadian rhythms is that our bodies are synchronized with our environment, the cycles of day and night on the earth. And so being outside helps you become synchronized with what's going on around you. We're living in homes. We don't have any direct sunlight. We're temperature controlled homes. We don't have that daily touchstone of daily reset of, okay, the day's starting and now what do we have to do? So scheduling it into your day, I think really helps. But people think like, oh my gosh, I have to go to a national park. I have to go camping. I have to do all of these things. And really they just need to become more aware and be more present, because even in a city, there is nature around you. There's trees, there's flower pots, there's birds. You can look up in the clouds. Being able to see what's around you in this present moment and see what's natural living around you. Even all the other human beings who are like running around and, looking at their phones and almost running into you. That's nature too. We have a connection with other human beings as well. So there is nature all around you. We just don't choose. It's not that we choose. I think we're just so caught up in our modern lives that we don't notice, which is another way of, we need to slow down and be more in the present moment, just like we talked about before. And that'll help us have this connection with our place in the world too. But I also think it starts with, we need to educate kids from an earlier age to understand, what goes into our food, our creation of our food, what goes into clean water. We don't have a lot of ecological training unless people go into ecology. School kids can name more Pokemon characters than they can name actual animals in our world. So kids have this ability to absorb all of these things and remember all these things. They're just not exposed to it at an early age. And it's not a priority for kids to understand what's going on around us in the ecology of the world.
You have kids. Again, I know you're in Colorado, and so you have a lot of benefit of communities that are outdoorsy and are active and nature centered. But how do you reinforce that as a priority in your house? Or how would you suggest others do it in communities that are less nature centric?
Yeah, well, I make it a point that when we're in the car, we're all looking out the window and we point out things that we want everybody else to see. So look at that cloud. Oh, did you see that hawk flying over? Look at the color of the tree in the fall. I feel like when we're just out and about, it's important for me to make sure that my kids aren't just in their own heads or looking at their phones. When they look outside, they engage with the outside by noticing things. So that's something that I do. We do go on hikes and we do go outside and play and we do go camping. And I feel like I'm really lucky to be able to expose my kids to those things. But it can be as simple as just noticing the things out the car window that are around you. And I love it when the kids started saying things back to me like, oh, Mama, look at that. Look at the cloud. Look at the tree. I would be so happy. I'm like, they're noticing. And that's just a really simple way to start.
And I promise you, every parent is like, what? I can get my kids to notice? Will that cross over to the socks on the floor? Okay.
It
Everyone
doesn't.
outside. Out you go. One last question on this topic before we move on to sleep. The whole 1,000 hours outside, what's that about? There's like an app or something. Do you know anything about that?
I actually got rid of all of my apps for wellness and things like that. I did it for two reasons. One, those things were stressing me out. I would judge myself for not getting enough steps in the day. I would judge myself for not getting enough REM sleep. I would judge myself for not getting outside enough. And so I really wanted to cultivate this awareness in myself. And again, this is a total practice because I don't have it down perfectly. I wanted to be able to notice what my body needs. I wanted to be able to be like, oh, I'm tired. I need to go to bed. Or I need some fresh air. I'm really stressed out. I need to get outside and just take a couple of deep breaths because I know that it helps me. And so I want to go through this life and do the things I want to do without being judged by myself or held to a standard that might seem unattainable to some people. So I really just wanted to see what my body needs rather than hold myself accountable to a certain number of hours or steps or whatever.
Well, let's tackle sleep because that's, I think, the corner puzzle piece of our health. It's something we all want more of. We want more quality versions of it, but we aren't getting it. What are we doing wrong?
I think people assume it's all about the length of time that you sleep. When people studied hunter-gatherer groups that survived into the modern age, they found that they really didn't sleep more than we did. They slept 7-8 hours maybe. They didn't sleep when the sun goes down, and they usually woke up when the sun rose.
How do they know how cavemen slept?
Well, so these are
Or slept. I said
hunter-gatherer.
slept.
These are hunter-gatherer groups that have survived into modern day. They put fitness trackers on them. They put like Fitbit type things in it. It records their sleep and their quality of sleep and when they wake up and things like that. So yeah, we can't go back and study how we slept 15,000 years ago, but you can study, those groups who are minimally influenced by the outside world. Unfortunately, those groups are becoming fewer and fewer and see that all these similarities. It doesn't matter people who live in South America or in the deserts of Africa or in India, these native indigenous groups that still kind of live like a hunter-gatherer, all of their sleep habits were very similar. And it all goes back to their circadian rhythms are entrained or in tuned to their world around them. So every single cell on this planet, starting with the very first organisms of life, have circadian rhythms. And it's important because, for instance, the first cells in life needed to know when it was safe to undergo cell division. Well, you don't want to have a whole bunch of UV radiation, so we need to have our circadian rhythms tell us when it's okay to undergo cell division. When is the best time to go and have photosynthesis? Well, you need to know when the sun's up. So we're going to have some photosynthesis during the day, and we're going to do our cell division at night. So we get our maximum nutrients and we get our maximum safety for cell division. That was happening, at the very, very beginning of life. And that thread ties us all the way from back then all the way to now. We evolved responding to cues in our environment. Our biggest cue was light, sunlight. What happens when we were hunter-gatherers is we'd wake up and we'd get a lot of intense sunlight in the morning. Then when the sun went down, we would get no sunlight at night. No light at night. Right now what we're doing is we wake up and we have the same level of light all day long. When the sun goes down, we still have our lights, we still have our screens, we still have all this blue light. And so our bodies don't know when to do certain things, like sleep. Our bodies don't know when to start making melatonin, which will really help us fall asleep. The wavelength they're specifically attuned to is blue light because that's the wavelength of light that penetrated the oceans all those many years ago. If we can make sure that we get our sunlight in the morning and reduce the blue light at night, then our bodies know that these certain rhythms like sleeping and digestion and healing and all of these things, they know when to do these things. So I really think that people just need to be aware that we have these circadian rhythms, and in training these circadian rhythms to our 24-hour day, the cycles of daylight and nighttime will really help with just our daily processes, and that's including sleep. It's not that our hunter-gatherer ancestors slept more than we did, but they were very attuned and entrained by the sunlight to their environment. Their bodies were never confused about what time it was, when was it time to do something.
So this is the part where people are tempted to Amazon Prime themselves into wellness, ordering light blocking glasses and, all of the biohacking sleepy time gummies and sleep trackers like the Aura Ring and stuff like that. How useful are those tools for improving the quality of sleep and helping your body to not be confused?
I feel like it depends on how people use them, and it depends on every individual. Like, for instance, I did not like those tracking devices. They made me more stressed. And so I feel like I would be laying there in bed thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not getting enough REM sleep. I haven't fallen asleep yet. And so it would make me stay up later because I've been thinking about my sleep. I'm problematizing something that I just need to try to trust and have come naturally. But I do have these blue blocking glasses. I do turn on night shift on all of my devices. I am very cognizant of the light at night that we have. And so it depends on, you don't have to spend a ton of money to biohack your way. You just have to be aware of things. And there are free things out there. Going outside in the morning and getting a bright dose of sunlight is basically free. Turning all your devices off or being more cognizant of not having blue light within an hour of bedtime. These are all things that are free to do. It's just a matter of deciding to do it and knowing that it's important for your health.
Well, deciding what to do. So that's where I want to ask you a little bit more about some of these practical ideas, because at some level it's experimenting, right? Like you said, you tried the apps. They made you crazy. So
Right?
now you don't use them. But for some people, maybe they've never tried the apps and that could help with their awareness. It's that taking personal responsibility, putting yourself in the driver's seat of what will work and not work for your own body. So let's talk glasses real quick. And then I want to hear if you have any other practical experiments that people could try to help improve their sleep. So I have a pair of light blocking glasses that I got with a fly kit. I got it to help with jet lag when I went to Mongolia, and it really did work. I barely had any jet lag and none on the way back, which is major because it's 13-hour difference. So, but now I'm confused, like, what time should I put those on? Should it be like if sun sets at 7:45, should I put them on at 6? I see some people wearing them all day if they work at a computer. How do you know?
Yeah, well, it's all depending on how people can see what their bodies need and see how their bodies respond. I usually have all of my devices go to nightshade about 4 or 5 o'clock. I start wearing my glasses probably after dinner. The sun might still be up, and if I go outside, I don't wear the glasses. I find that just what works for me. So I don't know why people would wear them all day long, because actually getting blue light in your eyes is a stimulant. And if we get blue light in the morning, it actually is a really good thing for us, because that is what entrains our circadian rhythms to okay, it's morning. Let's start our routine. So I think it just depends on individual people. I don't want to say you have to do this, you have to do that, because I've found, I used to have sleep apps because I wanted to know what was going on in my sleep. It was good to have for a while because it made me more aware of what was going on. And so maybe having something like that to start and seeing how it makes you feel, if it helps you, if it makes you stressed out, you just have to see personally what works best for you.
Do you have any other tips for listeners who may need a longer menu of hacks to try for themselves?
Yeah. Well, we talked about sunlight in the morning. We talked about decreasing blue light at night. Decreasing temperature, that is another signal to our bodies that it's time to sleep. Because if you think about it, we were outside all the time. And so when the sun went down, it would get cooler. And so turning down, your thermostat at night really helps with sleep. It also really helps to sleep in community with someone. I used to think that my kids would sleep so much better if they're all by themselves in their room. Well, I started actually falling asleep with them while they were in their room because they need that sense of security and comfort. So actually sleeping with somebody or having someone in the same room with you is actually a really positive thing that you can do for your sleep. That being said, there's some people who can't necessarily sleep with their partners because of sleep apnea and snoring and things like that. But those are underlying sleep problems that can be addressed as well. So I also think nowadays, because we live in this modern world and we have so much more flexibility with when we work and what we do for work, it's no longer, Most of the people are like 9 to 5, 9 to 5. I think it's really important for you to try to find activities that align more with your personal natural rhythm, because although, we want to entrain our circadian rhythms to the day and night cycle of the earth, people have chronotypes that are all over the place. People, who are morning people, who are evening people. There are some people who can't fall asleep until 3 a.m. and can't wake up. And so nothing's wrong with them. They just don't fit into the box that modern society has put on them. Those people who have these extreme chronotypes would actually help their group, because there's always somebody awake. There's always someone ready to be a sentinel. So I think if people can realize that there's nothing wrong with them, it's that they're trying to fit their personal biology and their personal rhythms into the box of society, and hopefully be able to find some other options of how to work and where to work and when to work.
Yeah, speaking of work, let's tackle work, because that is such a big one. It's such a big chunk of our lives for most of us. And I need your help to understand how we can even begin to realign our work lives with our ancient biology, when most people they don't even have the option of choosing when they take their lunch break. You know what I mean? So how are they supposed to they go to their boss and be like, listen, there's this lady, her name is Dr. Jenny Powers, and she told me that I really need a 2-hour lunch break so I can get some sunlight. I think we all know that that is a problem. So let's skip ahead to how do we fix it for this one, because it's pretty major.
Yeah. Well, we can't go back to how we used to live, where we would stop working when our needs were met. I think people have this perception that being a hunter-gatherer was this horribly, trying, and, you work all the time and you're suffering and you're hungry. And hunter-gatherers really only worked 15 to 20 hours a week of getting food. And then when they had what they needed, they stopped.
And that's, again, based on studies of traditional living peoples that are existing today. Okay.
Yes. And it all, I think, has a lot to do with their perception of time. They had an immediate return economy. They were always in tune with what they needed at the time. And so they could choose what they did. And we don't have that luxury anymore. But there are some things that we can do to bring some of the things that hunter-gatherers had in their work lives into the modern world. And one of it is our mindset. So I mentioned that the hunter-gatherers have this immediate return economy, which is where they have a need and they meet it right away. When we started with the agricultural revolution, we started having this delayed return economy where we would plant the seeds and then we'd have to wait and defend the seeds and water the seeds, worry about what the weather's going to do to the plants. And we would get our return on our investment in the future. So we became future oriented. And so I think this is something that we can learn from our hunter-gatherers. We are very future oriented. We are always worrying about the future. We're always overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And we need to learn how to be more in the present moment. It's not that we don't plan, it's that we're not so worried and overwhelmed that we can't plan. We need to be more mindful and be in the present moment. And we can do that at work. So if somebody, you only have a 15-minute lunch break, well, use that lunch break. There are a lot of people who don't take breaks. They don't get out of their chairs. They don't stretch. They don't go outside for the 5 minutes they have to stretch and get some fresh air. I think that is something, it's our work culture. Some people work because they have to. Some people really struggle and work 3 jobs and they're just trying to get by with it. But some people work for the sake of work. They work 80-hour weeks and don't take breaks and don't take vacations. And it has become a badge of honor, never not working, or hustle culture. And I think it becomes part of our work culture mindset, is that your worth and your success and everything is tied into your worth, when we have this innate need to take care of our bodies and our work culture doesn't allow us to do that. So yes, a lot of people don't have choice, but I think we need to have a shift in our work culture to help employers realize that working more than 40 hours a week is not productive. It may seem productive, but people who don't take breaks get less and less productive. They have more depression. They have more stress-induced pathologies. They're more likely to suffer from, diabetes and eating disorders because they're stressed all the time. So there needs to be this culture shift where we work to meet our needs, and we work because we're responsible and we're accountable to other people, but we don't work just for the sake of work. We need to realize that our worth is not tied to how successful we are. We need to know that the people at the end who have the biggest pile of stuff, they don't win at the end. There's just this culture in our society that we need to change.
And that's tricky too, because biologically we have mirror neurons so that we will have the safety of the tribe. And so we've got two biological, diabolical things in opposition to each other, right? Because we're at work and our tribe is essentially our coworkers. And if our coworkers are valuing their personhood by the number of hours that they sit at work or all the things that you listed, then it's hard for us to not also want to mimic that. That's pretty major. There are changes, though, happening. You see 4-day work weeks popping up in different companies. It's starting to hit the US, so we will see if that makes a shift. But in the meantime, are there any other practical tips that you feel like people should try on for size?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is we need to just learn to live with less. We don't need as much stuff. And if we don't need as much stuff, we don't need to work as long to pay for it. I feel like we have this culture of stuff for more stuff. Storage facilities and our houses are twice as big, but half the number of people live in them. I think if we can sort of get rid of our consumer culture of we need more stuff to feel good, that will help us work less. We need to live and work in the present moment. We need to meet our needs in the present moment while we are still meeting our requirements and our expectations and for other people. If we have breaks, if we get breaks, we need to take them. In the United States, if you get an hour lunch break, you're lucky. In other industrialized countries, it's a different culture. Most countries in Europe have mandated weeks and weeks of leave, mandated by their government. And people take that leave. They go and not work for an entire month in the summertime and just do what they want to do. But there's 0 mandated leave days in the United States. So the people who do get those days, who do get that break, need to take advantage of that, because there is, like you said, there is this culture of, well, I don't want to seem lazy and I want to be accepted in my tribe. It is really, really hard to be the fish swimming the other direction. All the other fish are just going downstream with the flow. So it is also really important to find people who are like-minded. I was listening to your podcast with Dr. Joan Ifland, and she was saying, like, before you start this healthy journey, you need to find people who have the same values. And that really, really helps you, because if you find the people who, working and taking breaks and going on vacations and living more minimalistically, if you surround yourself with people like that, that becomes the norm. Whereas if you're surrounding yourself with people who don't see life the way that you do, it becomes much more difficult. There's not a support system for people who want to go and do different things unless you find them.
Yeah, that's so true. I know we're coming close to our end of our chat today, but I want to tackle nutrition, because as you listen to Joan Ifland, she's fabulous.
It was amazing.
Thank you so much. She is a great source of knowledge, and she talks a lot about those biological drivers and how you can leverage them instead of fighting them. And I feel like nutrition is a tricky one in general because of the things that we talked about on that episode about food addiction and food additives that make them more addicting. And you have all these sensitive neurons that are prone to receive as much pleasure as possible. And so then we just go down that rabbit hole. But it's also difficult when we are trying to align our modern body, our modern way of living to our ancient bodies, because there's so much discourse around nutrition. Eat this, don't eat that, be vegan, be carnivore. It's all over the place.
It is.
So for people that are, let's just assume the listener is like at 0, like they're still at that mind-body connection. How can they begin to take baby steps in the area of nutrition without getting lost in all that discourse?
Yeah, well, I think what's really funny about all that discourse is everyone argues over what we should be eating. But I bet you almost every single one of those diet experts can all agree on what we shouldn't be eating. Those are the things that Dr. Ifland talked about, the processed foods, the artificial foods, things like that. So I think the first thing someone needs to think about, not by like, oh, what should I eat? They need to start figuring out what to replace some of the processed foods with. And that's basically whole foods. We, as hunter-gatherers, our evolutionary history, we always ate a whole food. We didn't extract the sugar from something and only eat the sugar. We didn't extract the oil from something and only eat the oil. We ate every single part of the plant that wasn't, that we could digest, and every single part of the animal, the organs, connective tissues, all of that stuff. So I think what's important is the companies did not, they're using our brain and our evolution to get us to buy and crave this unhealthy food. But what we also need to realize is that the knowledge of our biology and our evolutionary journey, we can actually learn they're not using that same knowledge to give us what we really actually need to be healthy. And those are whole foods. And so this was a big thing for me because I have kids. They're very picky eaters. I work from home, so I have really weird hours. But several things really happened that were really significant when I cut out as much processed food as I could and I started eating more whole foods. So I used to have to take Tums every night. I had acid reflux every night. I haven't taken a Tums in months. Like my acid reflux is gone. I've had symptoms of depression my whole life. I wouldn't say that, I'm cured of depression, but I feel like I don't have those really down days anymore. I feel like I've really helped myself be able to return to equilibrium when I'm stressed rather than going down the rabbit hole. I'm in perimenopause right now. Those symptoms have been greatly reduced. I don't crave unhealthy food all the time. I have this ability to be able to tell when I need to eat. And it's not necessarily morning, noon, and night. I feel full. I can feel that my body is full and that I don't have these cravings. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I need to eat. Because I get rid of the noise of all this processed food that causes all these disruptions. I can finally feel what I'm doing, feel what I'm feeling. I used to get this feeling of low blood sugar, like when you would crash after something and you'd like get sweaty and kind of dizzy. And I haven't had that in probably 6 months either. So don't eat the foods that we didn't evolve with, the processed foods, and start eating the foods that we did evolve with, whole foods. That's just the place to start. Whether or not you want to be all plant-based or meat-based or whatever, that's a personal decision, and that is also what your biology is going to tell you what you need. But just starting, everyone can agree what we shouldn't eat, except for the food companies who want us to eat it.
Naturally. These are really good tips. I feel like we have a track to run on for aligning ourselves just to feel better, to feel camping weekend better. And I think everyone can get behind that. Tell everyone the name of your book again and where they can get it, please.
Yeah, it's On the Origin of Being. We kind of did a little paid homage to Charles Darwin there. His On the Origin of Species is his famous book. So On the Origin of Being, Understanding the Science of Evolution to Enhance Your Quality of Life. It is anywhere you can buy your books online. It's in a couple of bookstores, but that's here in Colorado. But you can also find more about the book and Luke and I in our website, www.ontheoriginofbeing.com. I'm also on Instagram at ontheoriginofbeing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much, Meredith.